Okay, perfect. So a very warm welcome from our side to our first webinar on challenge-based learnings in higher education institutions. So I'm very happy to see so many of you joining us today. For the start, I would like to invite you all to turn on your cameras. So please turn on your cameras that everyone can see you, and give us all a very big smile for today's webinar. Hi everyone, I see a lot of familiar faces here. Background is as well, as you all know, all EU projects need a very good documentation. So please give us all a great smile before we start. Okay, thanks a lot. First of all, so the webinar is on challenge-based learning, which is so to say, an educational approach where students, researchers work on real life or complex problems and challenges, often together with external partners like companies, startups, the civil society, or publics and institutions. So instead of learning, so to say, only theory, students apply their knowledge in practice, work in interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary teams, and develop eventually solutions to these challenges or problems. And this is the background of the challenge-based learning. For universities, this approach is becoming increasingly important, and it also strengthens, of course, 21st century skills, innovation skills, entrepreneurial thinking, as well as collaboration methods, techniques, and connections between academia and society and economy. And this is the reason why the topic is part of EC2U Alliance, especially Work Package 9, the so-called Innovation Hub. My name is Elisabeth Ulbrich. I'm head of the Open Innovation Center at JKU Linz. And together with Ricardo Costa from University of Salamanca, we are responsible for Work Package 9 within the EC2U Alliance. Our aim is here to build a strong network of experts and share knowledge between the universities. What can you expect from today's webinar? So we have two very fascinating speakers, both prepared interactive input sessions around 20-30 minutes. Andrea, our first speaker, also prepared on Miro something, and we will do a short breakout session there to collect all the questions, all your discussions, and we are very happy to have a Q&A at the very end of our webinar. In total, the webinar will last around 1.5 hours, not more, and it will be shared and shared afterwards. So that's it for the start. From my side, and I'd like to welcome Andrea Schaffer, our first speaker. She's head of the Art and Science School for Transformation at JKU Linz. The School for Transformation is a bachelor program, 3-year-old right now, and it's developed together with another university, the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. And the whole program is strongly based on challenge and experience-based learning. So she's a perfect speaker for this topic here. I'm already very curious to learn more about their approach in the study program. And so thank you very much for your time and effort, Andrea. The stage is yours, so to say.
Hey, thank you. Then I will also share my screen and also give you a little bit of information about my background. Very happy to be here. I'm also seconding the same Elizabeth was saying, very happy to see some faces here. And if you are not, I just muted someone. If you're not talking, please stay muted, then it's a bit easier. We are a lot of people and that's very nice to see. I will be sharing my screen soon, but first give you a short introduction who I am and what my backgrounds are. Elizabeth already pointed out, I'm the head of the study program that's called Art Cross as a Transformation Studies. The school is called Art Cross Science. We do have a bachelor program and also a PhD program. And we are right now working on a master's program. So we'll see where that leads us to. My background is I'm a communication and social scientist, but have been working in inter, trans, and cross-disciplinary contexts for quite some time. I formerly was in a study program working as a postdoc that was called Cross-Disciplinary Strategies. And I'm also an organizational developer and group dynamics trainer. So that is something that you will also see in my presentation, that those skill backgrounds come into the whole concept as well, of course. So I'm now sharing my screen. Also before I start with my presentation, give you a short info about how we are going to do the webinar. Elizabeth already made the welcome. I will now do my presentation. Antti is then following me. I will then show you the Miro board for 2 minutes and explain how to collect some questions, because we want to do a breakout session with you where you have the opportunity to discuss with others and also collect questions. And then we come back to the Miro board and we'll address your questions and go into a Q&A and discussion. And now going to the first part of my presentation. The idea for this presentation was to give you some insights, not into challenge-based learning per se or some exercises, but to frame the whole study program, the one I'm working on right now. And it's also, that's why I also put it here, also, of course, referencing the study program I had been working on in the past. And the question is, what if a study program itself is a challenge? So the idea is that the whole transformation studies program works as a process of socialization into dealing with experiences and into dealing with challenges. And that is something that makes the whole setup and also the role of the teachers, the educators, and the students quite different. And the idea behind all of this is that we have to bridge a lot of different boundaries and also topics. And that's one of the things that got addressed in the last 10 years, quite frankly, and quite often, that disciplines have to learn how to work together. University has to get out of their academic surroundings, interact more with society. Science communication is right now a big topic. And so our study program is an answer to all those questions. What are and how are disciplines able to interact with each other? How does the arts come into that? What role do they play in that? And so the idea of our study program really is to facilitate all of these different challenges and all of these different topics. So if you look into the different areas and topics we are trying to address, it's basically an in-between where we act. So there are a lot of different parts, mainly, and in the beginning, the idea was very much focused on the connection between different scientific and disciplines and sciences and the arts, and the question on how to bring them together. But it's also, of course, a question, how can research and arts and academia interact with each other? And another question that is driving us is also the question of how is this relationship between more theoretical parts and also the making and the practice of things. So how do we get students into doing and into developing projects and into actually creating impact? Transformation is very much about a very situational approach, looking at certain societal problems and challenges, like climate change, for example, technological transformations, societal and social transformations, and then trying to come up with projects and solutions that are complex as well. One of the basic theses is that if you have a lot of complex topics, you need also complex answers. It's not possible to answer complex questions with very linear and simple solutions. So we are also acting in this field between academia, society, civic society, and trying to get people and students outside of our university surroundings. And one of the things how we try to do it is that we as two institutions have cooperation with each other. And both of those institutions are also very different. So our students, from the first minute they come into our study program, they have to bridge that as well. And JKU and the University for Applied Arts are very different organizations and institutions. And so they have, from the first minute, also to bridge those differences. It is very much about, and I have collected some of the most important terms we are often using, and we'll address them a bit. It is very much about facilitation. The whole approach of the study program is to create a working environment where students can, on the one hand, develop trust into doing, but be able and learn how to facilitate projects in certain situations. And what's important there is that not only the students have to do that, of course, we have to do that as well. So we are very much leading by example. We as a faculty, coming from a whole range of different backgrounds and disciplines, are also facilitating these kind of situations. And I will bring one of the examples of one of our classes at the end of my talk to give you some impressions how we do that. It's very much also about being open and being able also to change and adapt yourself. Coming from a discipline, I'm coming from communication science. Of course, there is a lot of sets, a lot of rules. I have learned how to act within my own discipline, but you have to let go of certain standards or adapt your standards if you're working in such an environment. And that is something that's, of course, also very much connected to biographical developments. For me, for example, I moved after I had been in communication studies and also was and still am self-employed for quite a long time as an organizational developer. I moved into architecture at a certain point. And that was a very interesting situation because I didn't speak the language of this discipline. I had no idea, frankly, in the beginning. And I had to get socialized. And that is one of my main messages. What we are doing in such a challenged and experience-based study program is a socialization process for students, but alike also for teachers and educators. So being aware that this is a longer process, how to deal with that, and also openness in that regard is quite important. We work a lot with methods of iteration, trying out things, doing projects, learning in the process. And then also adapting. We use mock-ups and boundary objects. Students never only write. That's one of the big differences to other study programs. They always have to do and make something as well. This could be workshops, this could be an object, this could be an art piece. It's a whole range of things that students can do. And that's also for us, of course, quite interesting, because we then also have to learn how to accompany them while doing that. So it's for us also very exciting all the time, because we are also learning. So everybody who is involved in such a thing has to have an affinity to being able to change, to transform, and also to learn. Other topics that are quite important for us is agency. So it's always a question, who has in the whole process which kinds of agency? It's a very much eye-to-eye level working environment. And that's oftentimes in this surrounding of universities quite challenging, because universities are usually quite hierarchical organizations. And so we do set some counterpoints to that. And our aim is to create a community of practice, so that students that come in as a new generation then not only learn from their teachers and from each other, also from the older generations. And that is something that is working quite well in different formats, like I will address a bit later as well. So the whole idea of such a study program is really get people into self-organizing and learn how to do that, learn how to facilitate, and learn how to address problems, deal with problems, and deal with challenges, of course. So it is a process over time. It's nothing that happens from one day to the other. And it is also something that you can't explain to people, they have to experience it. So what we do is create a lot of different settings to get people and students into this mindset, and to learn how to facilitate and to learn how to develop such projects, and of course also to learn how to cooperate. Our aim is to become students, or get students into the mindset of being capable of acting and doing it themselves. And I will show you now what the different formats are. I will not address, but I put it on the Miro board. You will get the link then, the whole setup of the study program, but because that would be too long. But you can look that up here. What I did here, just to give you a bit of an insight how that is structured, I tried to work out what the different emphases are, and all the squares and also the circles are as big as their proportion in the study program is. And as you can see here is that the biggest part of the whole curriculum is this part that is called transform project work. It's 70 ECTS. That's quite a bit compared to the others. And that is all those settings, and I will show you which settings these are, that have lab character, settings that are set up for project work, set up for trying out, for experimentation, and doing this socialization process that I addressed before. The part that I will focus on is what are these settings? And as you can see here, and I will then show you an example of picking out the start weeks that we just did that semester. This is a process our students as a cohort and as individuals as well go through doing their 3 years of doing the bachelor's. And every one of these settings is always created in a co-teaching situation and in a lab and studio situation. So students always have to do something actively in those different formats. And the idea is that they get into it in the start weeks, have the first impression of how that's going, doing the first project, and then step by step and semester by semester, get more competent in facilitating their own project throughout the process. And in the last year, what they are doing is focusing on entrepreneuring the future and also their feed projects, where they develop their own projects and then also, of course, do their own project as the basis for the final project in the bachelor thesis in the end. So step by step in this process, they do learn how to do that, and they do learn how to facilitate. And I will now give you an insight into one of those examples, and that's the start week. What we did with the student is that this class, which is called Start Weeks, is not only a week in the beginning, it's really going throughout the semester. And as you can see here, they have in the first 2 weeks, different elements like getting to know the universities, visiting the universities. We also did with them an excursion, of course, to Linz, where we met this RoboDog at one of our institutes. We also created, for example, an open space and invited a lot of different researchers at JKU to have an open space and discussions with our students. And we also did a lot of things, of course, in Vienna, where they got to know the study program, got an introduction, and everything that was relevant for this. The main part of this study program was dealing with a certain area of Vienna. This year, we picked as an emphasis here Stetten in the 22nd district, because there is in the middle going on a big construction site. And also there is a cultural space there where people try to organize a civic society. And we got into a cooperation with them and did quite a bit there with them in this situation. And we had there some different, okay, it's now ringing at my door. I don't know if you hear it, but yeah, that's happening right now. In the Living Lab itself, we tried to create the space together with the people and the activists there. We had some lunches there, we cooked there. Of course, also met a lot of people there. The idea was to learn the whole setup, to learn how this area, we call it in Vienna Grätzl, so how this area of the city is working, and give our students insights into that. As a reference point, we did also, and that's only one of the examples, an excursion into Seestadt, that is part of Vienna, that is developed right now, is still developed. That's quite a big new quarter of the city. Talked to different experts, also looked at different maps, learning the structures within these areas to give students a perspective on how to address such issues, because that's an area of Vienna that is very much dealing with a lot of transformation and also a lot of critical points. There's a big highway built in the middle of the city, and there were a lot of protests in the last year about that. And they, of course, also had in this first semester a lot of several other classes, learned how to do academic writing, also individual emphasis they're interested in. But within the whole class of start weeks, the idea, and that's what you're seeing here, was that 5 of those groups start 5 different projects in this area of Vienna, and then work with a method that's called mapping. That's what you can see here in the background. At first doing individual maps for their own topics. They pick topics like looking at the greenery and all the scenery in Seestadt, for example. They did stuff like addressing park areas. Another group looked into housing complexes and talked to inhabitants there and what are their challenges. And then they had to structure that, build individual maps. That's what you can see here in the back. And then in a second exercise, they had to bring it together. That's what you're seeing here. And one of the elements here, of course, is to let them do that self-organized. So it was not led by us as the educators of this class. It was led by the students. So they learn how to organize themselves as a group of around 16 people, and how to get this into one shared map that will be further used. So now I'm coming to the end. And I think I'm quite okay with time, I hope, Elisabeth. So the idea here is that, of course, what they are doing this semester is not ending this semester. It will be transferred into the next semester. And the next colleagues, the next co-teaching team is taking over the whole topic they were working on this semester, and will transfer it into the next format, and that is transdisciplinary work. So what the students are going to do next semester is create actual impact projects in this area of Vienna. For example, one of the groups is thinking about transforming a playground that is right now not very nicely adapted. And then doing such civic society projects in cooperation with the Living Lab there in this area of Vienna. So there's, of course, a lot of other stuff to say, a lot of other stuff to address. We can maybe do that in the Q&A session, but for now, that's it from my side, and I'm very happy to answer your questions then in the end. And I'm now handing over to Antti.
Perfect. I will get in there and say a few words about Antti, that he also gets his, time here to prepare. So Antti Nuutinen is collaboration manager at the University of Turku. He has a background in natural sciences and entrepreneurship, and he's also startup founder. So he also got a very practical experience there in this kind of field. So his educational background is in the fields of biotechnology and food development and engineering, and also in medical device and IVD regulation. So today he's as a collaboration manager here from the University of Turku, and shares his insights on challenge-based learnings. So thank you very much, Antti. I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. And I suppose we can see my presentation here. Yes, perfect. Thank you for the great and factual introduction. So yes, I have been working now at University of Turku for 3 years, and as Elisabeth mentions, my main priorities here are entrepreneurship support and also business collaboration. And from that field, I get to work along with challenge-based learning quite a lot in fact. And from my experiences, I want to introduce today one key aspect that when we focus on the expectations we all put into this challenge-based learning and how to translate those expectations into something tangible, how we can improve the experience for all the participants quite a lot. Okay, without further rambling, well, managing expectations is the key. Because of course, when we have so many different types of challenges that we are trying to solve, of course, sometimes we succeed, and sometimes the end results are that everybody is not very happy with the results. Okay, in order to approach this problem easier, I tend to think in this division, how can we put into different tinier boxes? So put the bigger problem into smaller problems by dividing the types of challenges. And my division is that these are types of external challenges which come from outside of the university. So typically they are from local companies, municipalities, cities, organizations. For example, local food company can give this challenge that, okay, we have side streams in our productions. Could we do something useful with these side streams? Or City of Turku has plenty of public space. How could we improve this for the people of the city. So these are the kinds of external challenges we usually are solving together with our partners. Then the self-initiated challenges. These come from our students or researchers. So typically for students, they have some idea and they want to build a business out of that. So that is the challenge. How do I transform this idea into an actual business? Or for the researchers, we want to take the research out of the laboratories or study halls. How do we make that transform the research into practice? So these are the types of self-initiated challenges I see. Then the third part, the simulated challenges. These are your typical classroom setting, theoretical problems that during this coursework, we will try to tackle this challenge from this theme or topic. So your bread and butter challenges. Now that we have divided into these separate 3 groups, I want to take a look why we participate in challenge-based learning. And now we start to get into the expectations. When a student sees that, okay, there is this possibility, there's a project or class where we have an external challenge. So a company or NGO or municipality has given these challenges for the coursework assignment. The students typically, they feel, because typically these are not mandatory courses, they are voluntary courses where you get your study credits. But the reason why we apply to this is many times is that, hey, I feel that I'm already doing my master's, I have know-how, I have the knowledge, I can tackle this problem, I can solve this problem. So we want to get the validation that, hey, we understand what we are doing, we can solve these problems we are given. The expectation many times is for the students because the goal is to get a career, to get a job. When I do my studies, I get a job. And the student population typically sees that, okay, and company has given a problem. If I can solve that problem, hey, that company will hire me. So there's already these expectations when going into this challenge-based learning. The companies who give those problems, they have the expectations that, hey, we cannot solve this ourselves. The university people, the eggheads, they know how to solve this. So let's give them the problem. And now they have this expectation that, okay, we will get usable end results. So now everybody has these expectations going in. We haven't even started working on the challenge, and we have these expectations put in. I would like to also showcase the practical examples of each of these types of challenges we have at University of Turku. So I'll use this opportunity to showcase what kind of these external challenges typically are. So a good example is Flavoria Innovation Week, where every year there is a chosen theme. This year, or it was before Christmas last time, the theme was fish. In Turku, this is a coastal town. There's plenty of fish and fish industry, so it's only logical. Okay. But during this week-long innovation, where these the participants, the students, they are from all different faculties. We have 8 faculties here, so multidisciplinary student teams. They try to solve these real-life company challenges. And the companies that give those challenges, they need to be solved. Otherwise, their business is hurting. Okay. Another example are these capstone projects, where the topics, they are driven by real needs of companies, or it can also be research groups that give these topics. And for each chosen topic, a project team of students, typically 5 to 8 members from different study backgrounds will be formed. And with capstone projects, they last 6 months, I believe. Typically, those get good results. In the pictures here, we have some waiting times for surgeries have been able to be limited. Installation of solar panels for a local company the students were able to improve that. Okay. So some examples that, okay, we get challenges, our students, they can solve these challenges and everybody's happy. How about the self-initiated challenges then? As I mentioned in the beginning, they come from the inside. I have the motivation and ownership and expectations also, they originate from the learners themselves. If we have the example of a student having an idea that they want to grow into a business, or a researcher really wants to apply the results in practice, they are then initiated by the people themselves, they come from themselves, they are driven by these academic or entrepreneurial goals. And they don't come, there's no third party saying that, hey, solve this. So the essence is not that, or the essence is the ownership and the agency of the learner here. And of course, there the expectation is that I'm doing this for my own benefit. I want to learn how I can execute my plans. I need the practical tools. This is the challenge. By learning these tools, I can solve the challenge, get market entry, or whatever your goal is. Okay. How we run these, how we support these self-initiated challenges at University of Turku. For example, this first bullet point, business essentials for researchers. It's very structured format where when we have a group of researchers, be it PhD level people, and they have this mindset that we want to transform research into business, then that is the challenge. We give them the tools and together go through from starting your own company, how to find finances, how to protect the intellectual property, how to do the technology transfer, marketing, how to work outside the academic setting. That's also a challenge there. Okay. Then, second one I have listed here, the Boost activities. Boost Turku is a student-led organization focused on entrepreneurship development. So Boost Turku and other associations, companies and universities, of course, we have 3 universities here. We organize these learning activities where when you have this business creation challenge through hackathons, innovation camps, or other forms, or this learning by experiencing. And then the third bullet point, these entrepreneurship workshops are also support ran by me actually in these premises I'm currently located. It's a series, like 4 module series that runs each month in English that take you from your ideation phase to investor ready concept. So that's how we tackle that challenge. Okay. Well, then these simulated challenges, as I mentioned, these are your classroom setting, and it's a really typical way of teaching and learning in different faculties. I was just discussing with some students from School of Economics, and they had this simulation going on here in these premises where this supply chain management. So they had set up this supply chain management simulation software, I suppose, and then they have been running it for almost 2 weeks now, simulating the thing. Okay. I don't think we need to go deeper into this simulated because they are the bread and butter that we do in teaching. But okay, with the understanding what kind of challenges, at least I have identified, I'm very sure we have many more types of also, but this is what I can see from my work and my field. So the expectations when we participate, when we provide the challenges as third parties, company expects a finished product, but the student only wants a grade. Very typical for self-initiated challenges. If we have a researcher or student who believe that, okay, when I participate in this program, somebody will guide me from the beginning to end, that I actually have a running business. And then that's not happening. They just get this theoretical knowledge and then you get a grade, good work. Of course, they feel very unsupported. So much of the frustrations in challenge-based learning, they come precisely from when we are treating these expectations as if they were targets. And those two things are very different in my opinion. Expectations do not equal targets most of the time. Expectations, they are these beliefs that what should happen. And they are very emotional. They are most of the time, they are totally unspoken. The expectations I have listed, they answer the question that what do I believe that I will get when I participate in this challenge program? Most of the time participating in a company provided challenge, it doesn't end up in a job offer from the company. When that doesn't happen, I get sad. But when we transform these expectations into tangible, explicit, agreed, concrete goals, so targets, we can measure or at least describe what should happen during the challenge-based learning. And these targets, they are always spoken out loud and documented. Unlike these expectations that we just think inside our heads, this should happen. When we have a target, we get the answer that what are we actually aiming for, instead of just expecting things to happen. Well, of course, we all have expectations. We had expectations when we joined this webinar. What will I get from joining this webinar? So we cannot just say, I don't have expectations. No, that's unavoidable. It's impossible. We cannot remove these expectations because students, when they participate challenge-based programs, they expect always something. At least they expect the study credits. They expect that they learn something. Or many times they expect recognition when they feel that they do their very best and they are actually solving the challenges presented to them. So it's only natural to expect these things to happen. The partners, if a local business offers this challenge, they expect always at least some value. And of course, as teachers, we always expect that the participants learn. That's our job. We are teaching, so we want the people to learn. Learning outcomes are a must. So, when we cannot remove these expectations, we transform them into targets. So, what we actually can do, is that we expose those expectations, then we translate them into targets. I think this is easier said than done. But when we are honest about what kind of expectations we have, then it's much easier to transform those into these tangible targets. And why we want to do that is, once again, targets are clear. Expectations, they are drifting. everybody has different expectations, but when we have the clear targets, then everybody has the same understanding that what we are doing. And when we have these expectations that are not aligned to targets, the disappointments, the participant, the providers, the teachers, well, they can feel very personal. Even though nobody's failing, we are fulfilling the coursework. So, what I want to see in my own work with challenge-based learning is that we focus from managing the expectations to this very co-defined target, and co-define the targets always with the learners, with the partners, with the providers of the challenges. And why this is so important. With the partners, we want to save the goodwill. This is very much about the impact of higher education institutes have in the surrounding society we have. So we want to protect the goodwill by always having these very co-defined targets. So the partners, they keep providing us these challenges because they don't feel this disappointment. We reach the targets we set, and hopefully we always exceed them. You get the actual solutions to your problems. Why they are important for the students? We want to keep the students very motivated. If I don't have the well-defined targets, of course, my motivation suffers, and when my motivation suffers, my learning suffers. And why they are important for the university? We live universities, higher education institutes. We need to protect our reputations. We want to keep in the good graces with our partners. So these expectations, they will always exist, and our job is not to remove them, but to make sure that they cannot cause harm by grounding them into these very clearly defined targets. Okay. So just get inspired, I suppose. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Antti. Thank you very much for your very analytical approach to this topic. I think it sheds a lot of light on the whole structure, how to implement challenge-based learning within the higher education institutions. I would directly hand over again to Andrea again for the next steps.
To the plenary session. We will do it like now, that we focus on specific post-its, and then Antti and I will get into the discussion, and I will always in the beginning ask you to explain a bit what was the background of your question, what you're interested in. So I will start on the right simply. And my first question is for the person or the group that wrote this post-it. What were you discussing? What was the background of this question? Who wants to address that or can pick that up? Who did pose this question?
Hello, I can
yeah, that would be great. Hi. Yeah, hi. That
so I was with Miriam and Anna, and we were thinking of the different roles we also have within the institution, because we are not all teachers. So I'm from a support unit that gives supports to teachers in pedagogical innovation. And Miriam, for example, is in also a more cross-sectional area. So, but teachers do come to us with some questions. So regarding this question, we were thinking of because of planning is so important within this type of active method, how much time in advance would we need to involve the enterprises, for example, that will have the challenges for our students, in the case where the challenge comes from the enterprise itself, and benefit from the students' own research on questions and challenges. How would we plan this within the timeline of the semester? Because sometimes contacting the enterprises is a challenge itself.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think that is something where everybody of us can say something, also Elisabeth, of course, and Petra, because that's also part of their job. I'm maybe picking up from my side and then handing over to them. It's my answer would be in two parts. The first is start quite early and do that well beforehand. From my experience, it's always good to do this half a year in advance. And the second answer is, and that is something we are actually discussing quite a bit, you need a very good working network and relationships. So you need to know the people you're working with. So what we are doing is establishing quite fixed partnerships with certain institutions, organizations we had worked with, where you know the people, where it's easy to draft this collaboration, and also know that they know how to deal, for example, in our case, with a group of students who are engaged in their field. And that is something that works out quite well. And that is, in reality, from my side, relationship management and being well connected as educators in that field and knowing a lot of people in different areas. The example I brought to you, there were people in there I have worked with in the past. I did research projects with, where I know what their expertise is, and where it was quite easy to contact them and ask them, could you do an excursion with us? And that is something you have proactively always work on it, on that. And then it's easy, but it always takes a lot of time. Antti, do you want to also, from your perspective, add?
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course, you want to start as early as possible, but that depends, because the easiest way I have found out is when you structure this, that, okay, first you set up the team. If it's in the department of food development, of course, it's about food, then they just choose, okay, what's fashionable now? Well, something sustainable. Okay. Then how the process usually goes, when we are planning this course, let's say we start early, 6 months before, then you use the networks you have. Typically here, we contact the local chamber of commerce that, okay, hey, we have this invitation. Companies who would like to join, contact us. Okay, and if you know, you must know how many companies I need for this challenge, for example. It can be that there's only one company providing one challenge for the whole, or if you have a big class, let's say 30 participants, then you want more companies. So we have had those situations that, okay, the study plans we tend to keep. So in the study planner where the students actually pick the class, we don't list the company. So we keep our options open, because usually we don't have the contract signed. So it can be that by latest, you want the day before the challenge actually starts, you want to have the companies or the external parties set up. So that's my answer. Start early, but at least the day before. And use the networks, the Chamber of Commerce, etc.
Elisabeth, do you also want to add?
Yes. So we, as the Open Innovation Center, we have a plastics pilot factory there with a lot of company partners from the plastics industry. So we have already this good relations to the plastics industry there. And together with another institute, we developed this challenge, and so to answer it very short, it's like one semester ahead, we started to prepare the, contacting the industry partners, finding the right person there at the company who is responsible or able to bring up a challenge that could be relevant for this program and could be very interesting for the students to work on. And this is one of the hardest part actually, to get the right partner there and someone who is interested in these kind of outreach from the perspective of a company. And then they really, actually, to my personal experience, they really like to get involved into study programs or into classes. They really like that. They really like the exchange and also the understanding how current students think, or understand how the Gen Z thinks and works. And I really find it very, very interesting. But as Andrea mentioned before, it's really very important to understand the different backgrounds as well as the different expectations, as Antti said, and to see it as a whole, as Andrea said it, socialization process.
Thank you very much. Okay, then I would suggest moving on to the next question, if that's fine, Silvia?
Yeah.
My guess is that's also from your group, the next question.
Kind of like arrange them there in that little corner.
Yeah, makes sense. What did you discuss in regard to this question?
Okay, so one of the challenge is the word of the day, right? So one of the challenges that I think also teachers face and students face is the way groups are organized and how they work. And we always know that it's very difficult to have a balance within the group. So I was wondering how colleagues manage this, both in terms of the roles that are given to the students within the challenges and the projects and these courses, and how also how do you keep all of them engaged at a similar level, and if this also has impact on evaluation within the project.
Yeah. Antti, do you want to answer, or shall
I? I could start with this. We
Yeah.
tend that these kind of programs, they are aimed for the students who are already at least at master's level. So they are they have the understanding of their field already. And then these challenge-based, we want to have them that we have the participants are from the different faculties. So not only engineers, but from the economics, humanities, whatever field. So then we can understand it happens naturally. I have economics background. Okay, I will look at this challenge from this point of view, and you as an engineer, you look at this point of view. So this is the optimal situation that, okay, it happens organically. I have no idea how it would happen if you have students who have their first semester. Then I just wouldn't propose them doing this, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Maybe I can add to that, because we are also doing that with first semester students, and we are actually managing the groups. So people per se have a tendency to stay in their familiar groups. And we are in a quite privileged situation. We have around 20 students per cohort. That's not very much. And they have, as everybody does, a tendency to stay within their friends group. So we are actively breaking up friends groups, for example, asking them to move into different social settings. We had this exactly in the Stat Weeks as well. When forming these groups, look into the competences that are in the group and make sure that, for example, very basic thing to think about, every group has to have at least one person who is able to speak German, because otherwise you won't be able to interact in the city of Vienna. Or make sure that they have the competences to do some graphic and layout things. We work on them with on different criteria, and then try to form the groups, and try also to not make it awkward. And from my experience from the other study program I have been in the years before that, with time that works quite well. In the beginning, they are oftentimes a bit hesitant to change into different social settings. But with time, they learn that they themselves learn more if they confront themselves with different students. So what then happens over time is that they make intergenerational groups. That they try to think about forming the groups in with the question of which competences do I need in this project, and not who do I like. And that's also part of the socialization process, to learn that you have to bring in people into a project that can bring in certain competences, and not act out of who do I like and who do I don't like that much. And of course, last sentence to that, that is something that is very situational and very much connected to the individuals. So you have to know the people. And that is, from my experience, coming from a mass university in the beginning. So I did study and teach a lot at the University of Vienna, who has around 90,000 students, in a study program that has around 7,000 students. That is really something that you have to adapt to the numbers. And then you also have to adapt yourself and simply ask them, because oftentimes you don't know. We are in the privileged situation that we do know them. But with the first years, of course, that is a process, getting to know them and know what they are able to do. And ideally, in the end, when they are in their bachelor thesis situation in the end of their studies, you do know what certain people and individual need for their work. And that is, of course, also as an educator, a very nice situation to be in, forming these relationships. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
So then I would say we address the pink ones. Elisabeth, how much time do we have left?
So actually the whole meeting should last 1.5 hours. So I think 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, great. So the pink ones, my suspicion is that they also came out from one group. Who wrote those post-its you're seeing right now? And who is able to elaborate a bit on the questions? I don't see anyone right now.
Yeah, so I was in the group
okay.
where these questions emerged from. So yeah, I think maybe starting with the first one, so how to identify the challenges to add to the teaching, that was a little bit out of the discussion. So yeah, really wondering, okay, so how to identify suitable challenges, and also going together with the second one, how to structure the teaching around the challenges. So how do these two interact? Like our kind of the way we structure our classes in teaching, and identifying the challenges that really fit into that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can lead with the how to identify the challenges. The easiest way is that you put the call out that, okay, during this coursework semester or whatever, our student groups will be tackling challenges within this theme or topics. So the companies themselves or the third parties can offer that, okay, this problem, because it's about problem solving, I feel most of the time. So when you put out the call, then we hope that the companies say, look, that okay, hey, we have this kind of issue. Let's propose that. Okay. And if we are in the happy situations that we get many proposals from the third parties, then we can just pick and choose that, okay, we'll tackle that. Okay.
And for us, where it's more embedded in the study program itself, it's really a design process. So I do address that like I do it when I do workshops outside of university, when working with companies or organizations. So it is a design process. And the important part, it's a design process with the whole faculty, with the whole team. So you really need a core team of people who are teaching the program, who have a shared understanding of how to do that. I actually have written an article in the last weeks with two of my former colleagues. I can share that if you want to. And you really have to develop the strategies, how to do that, build a shared understanding of it. So you're able to work separately as well, but know what the main direction is. And then it's really a design process, getting together, discussing it, and then designing the whole semester together so everybody can go in. And what we tend to do is also, of course, make sure that not everybody has to be there every time, because then it's a lot of teaching hours, actually. So there are touch points where we work together, and there are touch points where we do workshop like settings where we work on our own or in pairs of two. But it's really a design process like you would structure a seminar or a workshop outside as well. So it's really facilitation is my answer. Okay. And you also had two other ones?
Yes.
Yes.
So they also kind of belong together. So that's all a little bit around assessment of the challenges. So on the one hand, then I think it stems all from Anti's talk with it's important to manage expectations. So what do the challengers get out of it? What do the students get out of it? But also then how do we actually assess if the challenge was kind of successful? Also, in terms of evaluation, so how to address that, how to evaluate the students' performance in it, and really being transparent, kind of what the learning goals are and how the assessment criteria are. So how to address that.
Well, typically we have this kind of in the study planner. There's targets that okay, the assessment part is easy. These courseworks, they are typically pass or fail, and you pass depending on okay. There's the target. You will need to return an end report, for example, or a pitch deck for the solution you have for the problem the challenge giver gave. Okay, then it's simple. If your group, because these are typically done in group, if your group returns the written report or does a presentation for the company, then they pass. Okay, simple as that. No further evaluation on there. And what do the challengers, so the challenge givers, I suppose. So of course, if the target is set that, okay, we will look at the problem you have and we will provide these 10 different student groups. They will look from their own perspectives. They will provide you their ideas for the solution. That is what they get. Of course, they can expect that they can get a ready solution for their problem and go with it, but try to avoid that kind of expectations. Put the target. We will provide you 10 reports on the topic.
Yeah. For us, it's always two-way strategies. The first one is, of course, there have been, if you have to give any grades, then there have to be some hand-ins. And in our case, for the start weeks, the example I presented today, it's on the one hand, the maps and the things you have seen also in the pictures, in the images. Then they have to do a research diary where they document their own thoughts and their steps and explain and also argue why they took certain turns. because it's a very process-oriented setting. So we need something that is reflecting this process. And then, of course, it's also the attendance and doing stuff within the class, being present at certain events, for example. But that's something how we try to construct this. And in terms of evaluation, my experience is that it's always good to do a part that is self-evaluation and self-reflecting. So what we did in my former study program is there was an assessment sheet and the students had to fill that out. And in the case that our perspective on their performance was the same as the perspective of the students, and they have a tendency to be quite honest, interestingly, then it was all set and they get the grade that we agreed on. And in the case that there was a distinction between those perspectives, then we get into conversation and talk to them and come to a final conclusion. But we do the grading as well, quite participatory usually. I like to do that because it's more interesting for me as well to hear their perspective at last. And we always have, and I think that's very important, we already did that for the start weeks, we always have a feedback session with the students where they have the opportunity in small groups, like we did here with the Post-its and the cards, to collect questions and to collect their comments and their feedback, and then bring that into the class without having to do that as an individual. I think that's really important to open up the space so that they can also, of course, voice their critique. Good. Then there is a blue question. What is the difference between external challenge-based projects and service learning projects, if any? Do we know who posted that question?
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Great. Do you want to explain a bit? Yeah.
It was me. Thank you very much for both presentations and for the discussion. It's been really enlightening. And in fact, that question, I hope it's self-explanatory enough. While I was listening to Antti describe the different kinds of projects that we can have when it comes to challenge-based projects, I was establishing kind of a continuous relationship between that kind of project and I'm sorry, of course, there's a typo there. There should be just one service word, right? Okay. So I established the difference, the similarities between those projects and the service learning projects, which are the ones that I usually do in class. I would say that they are similar in lots of respects, but and of course they both involve students getting involved with the community, students' citizenship responsibility, lots of, I guess there are lots of similarities, but are there any differences? I mean, can we consider them completely different from each other, and how and why? Thank you.
Okay. I'm not familiar with this term, but now I asked, okay, Google Gemini gave me some idea. I would say that in these challenges, we have a clear problem that is looking for a solution. And if these service-related projects, here it says like participate in projects like planting woods or starting pollinator gardens, okay? Community cleanup. If these are that kind of, I have no idea. I'm not familiar with this term at all. Okay, but with these challenges, we always think that, okay, we have a problem that is looking for a solution.
Exactly the same.
Okay. Well,
yeah, in that sense, they are exactly the same. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, okay, well, thank you very much. Anyway, I'll try to explore then the differences and similarities and see if they can be considered interchangeable, or maybe one is more useful than the other. And I don't know, I might change from service learning projects to challenge-based projects. Thank you so much, Antti, anyway.
Yeah, from my experience, it's more exciting for them if they have challenged oriented projects. And they can can do more. And it is a lot of things that should change, I hope, in the future, is that students learn to make, to do, to have agency, and that we move away from this very service-orientated classes where they hear a lot of content, but they never try it out and do it themselves. But of course, it's, as I have already addressed, it's a very privileged situation my study program is in, because we don't have thousands of students. We have small and very groups that are very well to handle. And that is the whole discussion about AI also feeds in that, of course, because that's something that is not possible to do for our students in our setting, but in settings of big classes and a lot of students, of course, that's a topic. Thanks a lot. We have one question left, and then I would hand over to Elisabeth again. So the last question is, how could we propose challenge-based training in just a few hours for doctoral candidates? Is the person who posted this question still in the room? And if not, I would just address that, if that's okay for you, Antti, because that's something, of course, that is also challenging us, as we do.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, as we do have a PhD program, you really have to break it down. From my experience, it's also working in classes where you don't know the group that well. And if you only have a few hours, you can build challenges where they do some in-class group work, for example, where they have to go out, do some research or some interviews, something where they have to engage with the outside and bring it back. So from my experience, it's really possible also to scale that down, not to have such a strategy going over one or even more than one semester, having a strategy where you really put that into, for example, a 1 or 2 hour slot, and let them do and create something together, and then bring it into the class. So that is, to give you an example, what we did with our PhD students in a class that is called Introduction into Transdisciplinarity. They had to do and use a format that is called consulting, collegial consulting. They all have their PhD projects, of course, and they are right now in preparation for the colloquium asked to form groups of 3 and to collect questions. It's a very basic task, but to collect questions, that is challenges, of course, questions that could come up in their colloquium, in their first big exam they do have and presentation they do have now in January and in February. And then they have to consult each other on the questions and come up with answers, and then document that and bring that back into class. And that's a very simple, very small didactical setting that we created there to give them the possibility to be proactive and do something also that makes sense to them. I hope that answers your question. I would now stop the screen sharing and hand over to Elisabeth again.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you for guiding us through the whole Q&A session also, which were quite good via Miro, I think. So I'd like to thank you all for your engagement and your participation, as